Let's take a look what happened across the property markets over the weekend. Now, throughout the country, the auction clearance rate was 77.7%, so it was lower. In Sydney, 81%, you can see here, 232 auctions across the weekend. So the auction clearance rate not quite as hot as it was. Additionally, another 1,131 private sales. In Melbourne, the clearance rate there, 83%. Now, that's pretty strong, you'd have to say, from 459 auctions, plus another 1,071 properties were sold privately across the state. In Brisbane, just 42 auctions. The clearance rate here is always a bit lower, 71% over the weekend. There are also another 1,121 homes sold privately. In South Australia, there were 42 auctions. Clearance rate here, 90%. It's been a little stronger lately in South Australia. Additionally, another 322 private sales. And lastly, in the ACT, 65 auctions. The clearance rate here, well off, 69%. Could be a bit of a litmus test. There was another 60 homes sold privately. Well, to catch up on the property markets a little earlier, I caught up with REA Group economist Anne Flaherty and just asked her about some of this interest appearing to flag around the country.
I think that people are becoming a little bit more nervous than they were about when interest rates might rise. I think most people expected them to increase over the next 12 months, but last year's inflation figures have really spooked a lot of people, and there's a lot of talk about how soon we might see an interest rate rise, as soon as tomorrow, potentially.
The other aspect of this is also that you're starting to see through the PropTrack home price index out on Friday. Hobart prices have fallen over the past month. Sydney values, all dwellings, down by 0.1% during that period of time. You know, there's reasonable growth in other parts, but, you know, sort of Melbourne's off the boil as compared with where it was. So that's an indication that after very strong growth last year, that today maybe the buyers just aren't quite so willing to pay what they might have paid just even 3 months ago.
Well, what we have seen is definitely cooling pressures are emerging. We had the most subdued price growth in April that we've seen really over the past 2 years. So I think that people are factoring in increased interest rates. Fixed interest rates have already been increasing for several months now. And I think that people are becoming a little bit more cautious.
But didn't you find it interesting that both political parties, the government, through its home buyer scheme, where it's actually giving lower income people an ability to get a government-backed loan with only a 5% deposit. On the other side, Labor says, well, you only need a 2% deposit. We'll come in with an equity share with 40%. We'll actually give you up to around about as a down payment for your home. Is this the right time to be doing this, to be encouraging first home buyers into the markets with relatively small deposits?
I think that it's very situational. What these schemes do is enable people to get access to the market. So those same requirements around, you know, people being able to service their debt, particularly their ability to service their debt with a buffer. So we know that when banks look at how much to lend people, they actually factor in a 300 basis points increase above what rates they're going for today to ensure that they can pay that amount. The problem for first home buyers really is that deposit hurdle. So there are definitely buyers out there who are able to service loans quite safely, but they haven't been able to keep up with rising property prices over the last few years.
Both political parties see this as a political hot point, that they actually see that there are potential votes in this, that they know that there's pressure, especially on younger people, with that deposit hurdle that you talk about, that's the key for those people, and maybe, just maybe, might also swing their vote.
It could do. We know that housing affordability has become a growing issue for a lot of people. It's being talked about as an area of concern for more and more young Australians especially. So I think that the government is aware that, you know, it is potentially a good political move to target this cohort and try and, you know, make some policy that seems a bit appealing to these types of buyers.
So one aspect of it also is the auction clearance results, the number of auctions coming up, because if you thought there might have been weakness in the market, if you were a seller wanting to cash in on these higher prices, you might be putting more property on the market. If you're a buyer, you might be a bit more selective in terms of what you're potentially going to buy. That's almost the psychological dynamic of the market right now, isn't it?
I love the expression, the psychological dynamic. I think that with property prices slowing, there are potentially a lot of vendors out there who think, maybe now actually could be a good time to sell, particularly if we start to see some further cooling pressures emerge as interest rates rise. We have actually seen more properties up for sale compared to, say, the same time last year. And this is good news for buyers. It means that there's more choice on the market. And the fact that we are seeing more properties coming up for sale means that we've absolutely transitioned to what has been an extreme seller's market to a more balanced market.
Always good to have a chat to you, and many thanks for your time today.
My pleasure.